April 6, 1970, Route 1 near the border of Cambodia and South Vietnam. The morning mist clings to the jungle canopy like breath on glass. The air is heavy, warm, metallic, and filled with the distant hum of insects. Beneath that sound, deeper, lies something else. The low thud of artillery miles away, echoing through the trees like a slow, distant heartbeat. Sean Flynn, photojournalist, son of Hollywood legend Errol Flynn, adjusts the strap of his Leica camera. Dust streaks his khaki shirt. Sweat darkens the collar. He moves with deliberate quiet, his every step swallowed by the red mud beneath his boots. Behind him walks Dana Stone, another correspondent, cigarette clenched between his teeth, his camera swinging gently with each cautious step. They had left Phnom Penh that morning. The city was tense, filled with rumors of Khmer Rouge patrols moving along the roads, of reporters disappearing without a trace. But Flynn had a different kind of fear, not of death, but of silence. He once told a colleague, "If you're not close enough to see what's real, then what's the point of carrying a camera?" Now, as they approach a small village half hidden under banana trees, the question feels heavier than ever. The place seems deserted at first. No children, no chickens, no sound of water buckets or cooking fires, just wind and flies. The two men glance at each other, eyes speaking the words neither dares to say, "This isn't right." Flynn raises his camera anyway. He clicks the shutter. The sound is sharp, out of place like glass breaking in a church. The image it captures will never be seen again. Then, movement. At the edge of the trees, shadows. 5, maybe 6 figures. Bare feet. AK-47s slung low. The red scarf of the Khmer Rouge catches the light. "Stay calm," Stone whispers. The men approach slowly, rifles pointed down but eyes hard. Flynn lowers his camera. His hands are steady, a practiced calm, the kind he used to show under fire in Vietnam's Quang Tri province, where he once photographed a South Vietnamese soldier dying in the rain. But here, there's no rain, only heat, and the faint smell of smoke. One of the guerrillas speaks in Khmer. The words are soft, almost polite, but there's no mistaking the command. Flynn and Stone raise their hands. Cameras dangle in surrender. Flynn tries to explain journalists, Americans, no weapons, but the men don't react. They gesture toward the jungle. The two correspondents obey. Step by step, they disappear into the green, into that endless corridor of trees that has swallowed soldiers, refugees, and reporters alike. Later, witnesses in a nearby village will say they saw 2 foreigners escorted north, barefoot, still carrying their cameras. After that, nothing. For weeks, the search goes on. Helicopters sweep the forests. Cambodian soldiers comb villages. The names Sean Flynn and Dana Stone begin to circulate like ghost stories in press tents, whispered over cheap whiskey and the static of field radios. In Saigon, other journalists, Tim Page, Perry Dean Young, Horst Foss, trade theories, captured, executed, lost. But in Cambodia, truth itself is a prisoner. And somewhere beyond the border, under the dense shade of the jungle, film reels lie undeveloped in rotting canvas bags. Inside them are frames of a war that no one wanted to see: a farmer executed in a ditch, a child holding a blood-stained flag, the eyes of a soldier before the shot. For those who survive, the images become obsessions. They haunt the dark rooms of history, fragments of light trapped forever in forgotten negatives. Decades later, bones will be found in shallow graves, but none can say for sure whose they are. The cameras are gone, the names fade. What remains is a silence too heavy to carry, yet too sacred to forget. The last known photograph of Sean Flynn shows him smiling, squinting into the sun, a cigarette in hand. Behind him the road, ahead the jungle. Between them the distance where men vanish, and history forgets to look. The jungle thickens. Hours pass, or maybe days. In Cambodia's interior, time no longer moves forward. It coils, repeating the same sounds until they blur. Cicadas scream like broken wires. Distant thunder rolls through the canopy. Flynn and Stone are led single file by their captors, barefoot Khmer Rouge guerrillas, barely older than boys. Their eyes are blank, trained to obey the rhythm of ideology. Each carries an AK-47 black with humidity. The muzzles glisten under the filtered sunlight that seeps through the leaves like candlelight through cloth. Stone tries to talk. His voice is low, uncertain. We're journalists, American, neutral. The guard in front says nothing. Flynn glances at him, sees the faint scar on his jaw, the way he avoids looking back. He knows that silence too well. It's the sound of men who've stopped believing there's a difference between truth and survival. When the column halts, Flynn reaches for his camera. The youngest guard notices and shakes his head violently. No picture. Flynn lowers it, but not before his finger brushes the shutter, one accidental frame. It's the last photograph he will ever take. That night, they are held in a bamboo hut near Chifu, a remote outpost surrounded by rice fields. The guards whisper, argue. One of them has a radio voice's crackle in Khmer, urgent, unintelligible. A decision is being made somewhere far away, by someone they'll never see. Flynn lies awake on the floor. Through a crack in the bamboo wall, he watches fireflies rise over the paddies. The light flickers like flashes from a distant battle. He thinks of Saigon, of the film rolls stacked in his locker at the Continental Hotel, hundreds of images waiting for captions he'll never write. In his head, he replays them all. The screaming children of Hugh, the soldier who cried over his own grenade wound, the smoke rising from a napalmed hamlet. Each frame is a prayer, each shutter click a confession. He remembers the first time he went to war with a camera. 1966, Da Nang. The smell of cordite and salt air. The way the American Marines joked before a firefight, as if laughter could make them bulletproof. He told himself he wasn't part of it, that a lens was a shield, but Cambodia has stripped that illusion away. Here, he isn't an observer. He's prey. By dawn, the guards move them again deeper north, toward Kampong Cham. They wade through flooded fields where the reflection of the sky trembles in muddy water. Stone trips once, his camera plunging into the swamp. Flynn helps him up. They exchange a look, half apology, half acceptance. At a small river crossing, Flynn hears a sound he hasn't heard in days. The rhythmic thump of rotor blades. Helicopter. American. Maybe South Vietnamese. For a heartbeat, hope ignites. He raises his head too fast. A guard strikes him across the back with a rifle butt. Flynn falls into the mud. Stone shouts something, lunges forward, but another blow silences him. The helicopter passes overhead, indifferent. The jungle swallows the sound. By the time they reach the next camp, both men are bleeding, half delirious from heat and exhaustion. The camp is little more than a clearing of few thatched huts, a line of prisoners in ragged clothes. Khmer Rouge cadres move among them, eyes sharp, machetes at their belts. Flynn understands, suddenly, that this isn't a prison, it's a sorting ground. People arrive, and then they don't. That evening, they're tied to bamboo posts. A young interpreter, barely 16, asks them questions through broken English. "You spy CIA." Flynn shakes his head. "No." "Reporter, journalist, camera." The boy looks confused. He turns to his superior, a commander in black fatigues with a red scarf tied around his neck. The man lights a cigarette, exhales, and says something quietly. The interpreter translates flatly, "You take picture of Cambodia. Cambodia not want picture." Flynn stares at him, rain dripping from his hair. For the first time, he understands the full meaning of censorship in war, not the denial of truth, but the erasure of witnesses. That night, the jungle hums like an engine. Fire ants crawl over the prisoner's ankles. Stone mutters something about his wife back home, then falls silent. Flynn listens to the storm rolling in and realizes it sounds like applause, the last audience he'll ever have. Somewhere beyond the camp, another flash, not lightning, but the muzzle flare of a rifle. One shot, then two, then none. In Saigon, the next day, the press office receives a transmission: 2 American journalists missing near Kampong Cham. Last seen April 6. No bodies, no film, only silence. But the negatives they left behind, those captured moments of a war eating itself alive, begin to surface one by one in dark rooms across the world. And in each photograph, the ghosts of the men behind the lens are still there, watching from behind the grain. Phnom Penh, 1971. A single roll of 35mm film emerges from the chaos smuggled out through the border by a French aid worker. The images are blurred, underexposed, the emulsion warped by humidity. Yet among the ghosts of light and shadow, one face can still be made out: Sean Flynn, half-turned, eyes narrowed against the sun. Behind him, a Khmer Rouge checkpoint, the red flag snapping in the wind. The film is rushed to Saigon, developed in secret under dim light. When the negatives dry, Horst Voss, the legendary Associated Press photo editor, studies them for hours. He recognizes Flynn's Leica in one frame, hanging from his neck. But what captures him most isn't the face. It's the distance between Flynn and the soldiers beside him, a space of maybe 2 meters. A void. The invisible line where witness becomes victim. Tim Page, Flynn's closest friend, arrives soon after. He's still limping from his own near-fatal wound in Vietnam, a piece of shrapnel lodged in his skull. When he sees the contact sheet, he doesn't speak, just lights a cigarette, leans close, and says, "He got closer than any of us." The air smells of fixer and stale tobacco. Outside, Saigon trembles. The Americans are beginning to pull out. The streets fill with rumors, refugees, and abandoned promises. But Page stays for Flynn. He spends months searching, moving along Cambodia's front lines with only a motorbike, a backpack, and a fading photograph. He interviews soldiers, farmers, monks. He trades whiskey and film for stories. Some claim to have seen 2 Westerners near Kampong Cham, forced to dig trenches before being led away. Others mention bones found near Highway 7. Each story contradicts the last. In one village, a woman remembers 2 white men with cameras being taken north by Khmer Rouge cadres. She recalls how one of them gave a cigarette to a child before disappearing into the jungle. When Page asks if she remembers their faces, she nods, then points to Flynn's photograph. But in Cambodia, memory is fragile. Truth changes with whoever survives to tell it. By 1975, the Khmer Rouge seize Phnom Penh. The city empties, reporters flee, the archives are burned. Every photograph that might have spoken against the regime is destroyed. Negatives melted. Film reels buried. Names erased. In the countryside, those who once saw Flynn or Stone vanish into forced labor camps or mass graves, the world moves on. Vietnam falls, America forgets. But in Paris, London, and New York, old contact sheets still lie inside drawers, evidence of a generation that believed truth could be captured before it died. Among them, one frame stands out. It shows a Cambodian child, no older than 8, staring directly into the lens. Behind him, smoke rises from a village that no longer exists. The image was recovered from Flynn's earlier rolls, but it feels prophetic, as if he'd already photographed his own disappearance. Years later, when journalists speak of Flynn, they don't mention his lineage or his fame. They remember the way he moved calm, focused, unflinching, walking toward the things others ran from. The man who filmed hell until hell filmed him. In 1991, an expedition led by Tim Page and British journalists uncovers a mass grave near the Vietnamese border. Inside are the bones of several Westerners, 2 with camera fragments still attached to their belts. DNA testing is inconclusive. The jungle has long since consumed its dead. Page kneels in the mud, brushes the soil away from a piece of rusted metal, the edge of a Leica lens. He lifts it, staring through the cracked glass. The jungle refracts inside it green, endless, and silent. He whispers, "You saw too much, didn't you, mate?" In the distance, thunder again, or maybe artillery. The truth of what happened to Sean Flynn and Dana Stone remains unconfirmed. But perhaps confirmation was never the point. Their story exists in the negative space of history where evidence decays. And only the memory of those who searched for truth endures. And somewhere, in an unmarked grave, under the roots of a nameless tree, 2 cameras sleep, their lenses still aimed at the world. Kampong Cham Province, late 1991. Rain. Thick. Monsoon rain that turns the soil to red clay and erases footprints within minutes. A convoy of trucks idles near a clearing, engines coughing smoke into the wet air. Under plastic sheets, journalists and local diggers huddle, waiting. At the center of the site, a shallow pit, half filled with water, half filled with history. Tim Page stands barefoot at the edge, camera in hand. He no longer takes photos for front pages. "This," he once said, "is for the ghosts." Around him are fragments of boot sole, corroded belt buckles, a broken film canister. The mud clings to everything. The air reeks of rust, rain, and memory. A Cambodian villager approaches, holding something wrapped in a torn piece of cloth. Inside, a few teeth, a shard of jawbone, and the curved metal of a camera strap. Page doesn't speak. He just takes the object and lowers it into a metal evidence box. The act feels ceremonial, as if returning relics to the earth. He thinks of Sean, the way he smiled before heading out that April morning, the way he said, "If I don't come back, tell them the pictures were worth it." Now, decades later, Page wonders if that was true. The Cambodian interpreter beside him murmurs a local phrase, "Preah Damrai, the spirit elephant." It guards the souls of those who die far from home. Page nods slowly. Then maybe he's got company. The rain falls harder. Cameras click not as weapons now, but as rituals. Every flash illuminates fragments that refuse to vanish: a shirt button, a camera lens, a sliver of bone. Among the foreign press gathered that day are photographers who grew up studying Flynn's work, men who carried his images in their minds long before they ever carried a rifle or a camera. One of them, a young Japanese journalist, whispers. He showed us how to look, but looking, Page knows, was never the hard part. The hard part was carrying what you saw. When the digging ends, the remains are sealed and sent to the U.S. for testing. The reports come back months later inconclusive. DNA degraded, identification impossible. The jungle wins again. Still, the search continues. In 2009, more teams arrived: forensic anthropologists, historians, soldiers turned archivists. They use ground radar, satellite mapping, even psychic mediums. They find traces not of Flynn himself, but of the thousands like him: soldiers, reporters, missionaries, civilians, all lost to the same silence. In Phnom Penh, the Tuol Sleng Genocide Museum displays artifacts from the Khmer Rouge era, photographs of prisoners before execution, their faces frozen in that brief moment between life and annihilation. Visitors stare at the wall of faces, unaware that somewhere among the unnamed might be the missing reporters themselves, absorbed into the machinery of a regime that photographed even its victims before erasing them. That paradox, a dictatorship obsessed with documentation, yet devoted to erasure, haunts every historian who studies Cambodia's killing fields. And perhaps that's why Flynn's story endures. Because he, too, tried to document what the world was not meant to see. In an old interview, found years later in a French radio archive, Flynn's voice, soft, restless, says, "Maybe one day, the film will outlive the war. Maybe that's the only kind of victory we're allowed." The recording ends with the faint sound of him lighting a cigarette. Then silence. Today, in museums and dark rooms across the world, his work is studied not for its heroism, but for its restraint, the way it turned horror into witness without ever looking away. The frames he left behind: a soldier carrying his wounded friend, a mother clutching her child under a burning sky, are no longer photographs. They're memorials. And somewhere in that blurred distance between the photographer and his subject lies the truth of war, that every image of suffering requires someone willing to step close enough to be lost in it. When night falls over Kampong Cham, the jungle grows still again. The diggers leave. The rain returns. The soil closes like a wound that will never heal. And beneath it, the cameras sleep on lenses facing upward, waiting for light that will never come. Phnom Penh, 2010. The city hums with mopeds and new construction, the past buried beneath glass towers and embassy walls. But just a few kilometers away, in the killing fields of Choong Ek, the earth still breathes the memory of bones. Beneath the tree roots, fragments of skulls and cloth continue to surface each rainy season like whispers, refusing to stay silent. Tim Page is older now, his hair white, his gait uneven. He walks slowly across the field, camera in hand, not to document anymore, but to remember. He kneels beside a patch of disturbed soil and brushes it gently with his fingers. The same red clay, the same smell, the same silence that once swallowed his friends. A young Cambodian guide stands beside him. "You looking for your friend?" she asks softly. Page nods. She looks toward the horizon, where the last orange light of the day filters through dust. Sometimes the jungle doesn't give back what it takes, but it remembers. Her words linger, it remembers. That night, Page returns to his hotel, overlooking the Tonle Sap River. He opens an old envelope, yellowed and fragile, containing a single undeveloped film strip labeled Flynn, April 1970. He's carried it for 40 years. The chemicals have long since degraded. Whatever was once inside is gone, but he can't throw it away. It's the last tangible link to a man whose story was devoured by history. He places the strip on the window pane, against the neon reflection of the city. The film is nothing but darkness, but in that darkness, he imagines the shapes that might have been there: a road, a jungle, a man holding a camera and walking toward the unknown. Across the world, the legend of Sean Flynn grows: the golden son who abandoned Hollywood to chase truth into the heart of war. But beyond the myths, the reality is quieter, crueler. He was one of more than 30 journalists who vanished in Cambodia between 1970 and 1975. Some were executed, others starved, others simply disappeared. Their families never received official death certificates, only silence sealed in diplomatic envelopes. The wars ended. The news cycle moved on, but their absence became its own kind of presence, a hole that time never fills. Flynn's story, in the years that followed, became a mirror for an entire generation of war correspondents who carried cameras into Inferno's Sarajevo, Fallujah, Aleppo. Each time they pressed the shutter, they carried his ghost. For those who knew him, Sean was never just a lost reporter. He represented something the profession itself once stood for, the belief that bearing witness could change the world, even when the world refused to look. In 2018, an independent researcher revisits the old case, armed with satellite data and witness transcripts. He finds new testimony from a former Khmer Rouge conscript, an old man now, trembling with age. The man recalls 2 foreigners, white men, journalists, captured and brought to a camp near Kampong Cham. He says they were executed days later, buried in the forest. When asked why, he hesitates, then answers quietly, because they saw too much. The words echo like a verdict across decades. The truth of what happened to Sean Flynn may never be proven, but the images he left behind remain undeniable. They are the frozen seconds before impact, the gaze of a dying soldier, the hands of a woman reaching for her child amid fire. Each frame a heartbeat torn from history, preserved not for glory, but for memory. And perhaps that is the point, to film hell, and in doing so, prove that it existed. As dawn breaks over Phnom Penh, Page walks once more to the river. He lowers the old film strip into the current and lets it drift away, a quiet offering to the past. The light hits the surface, refracting into gold and silver before the water swallows it whole. He whispers, almost to himself, "Rest easy, mate. The world finally saw what you saw." The river moves on. The city wakes. And somewhere far beyond, in the endless green of Cambodia's interior, the jungle exhales not in words, but in the faint metallic breath of cameras that once dared to remember. Between 1970 and 1975, 37 journalists vanished in Cambodia and Laos, among them Sean Flynn, Dana Stone, and other correspondents from Japan, France, and America. Most are believed to have been executed by Khmer Rouge cadres during the chaos preceding Pol Pot's rise to power. To this day, fewer than 10 of their bodies have been recovered. The Cambodian War Crimes Tribunal, extraordinary chambers in the courts of Cambodia, would later estimate that 1.7 million people, roughly a quarter of Cambodia's population, perished during the Khmer Rouge regime from 1975 to 1979. The genocide's documentation, ironically, relied on the very tools Flynn and his peers once used: cameras, ledgers, confessions written on paper. What remains of Flynn's work, a handful of rolls. A few dozen photographs stands as testament to journalism's highest and most dangerous calling, to record what power wishes erased. Even now, war reporters walk into the same kinds of jungles, not always of trees, but of cities, ruins, and collapsing regimes chasing truth that may cost them everything. Perhaps the question that remains is not what happened to Sean Flynn, but what are we willing to forget when those who documented the truth disappear? What do you think? Was the truth they sought worth the silence that followed? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.